I just don't see how they could have just kept going down this path. And I think it very much changed the conversation in an instant.
Welcome into Northside Territory, Foul Territory Network's Cubs podcast. I'm Sahadev Sharma with Patrick Mooney. We're your Cubs beat writers at The Athletic. Patrick, we thought the Cubs were sellers, and here they are, their first two moves. Jed told us, Craig Counsell warned us, don't make it black and white. And I wouldn't say they're done and they're obvious buyers. I think it's important. Like, this is a nuanced thing, but they're the first two moves are buys. They added Nate Pearson, a quality reliever who has tremendous upside, and obviously the big move on Sunday, Isaac Paredes from the Rays. The Cubs have their third baseman. There's a lot to dive into here. I was shocked by the initial news, but it makes a ton of sense, and there's some pluses, there's some minuses, but Christopher Morel heads to Tampa along with Hunter Biggie and another prospect, Ty Johnson. This is a pretty big move. It's a significant move, and I think it improves the team now, and it checks something off the box for the offseason shopping list, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was just kind of shocked that Christopher Morel's value hadn't tanked so low that the Cubs, I thought the Cubs would kind of be out on something like this. And I clearly had this is my bad take confessional. I'd kind of rolled my eyes when Craig Counsell had said it would be a mistake or it'd be the easy story to write this or that. When, to be honest, the Cubs have not shown a whole lot of creativity in this realm. And they'd always been very clearly defined buyers or sellers since Theo first arrived in Chicago. But, there is a part of me that is like, buyer beware with the Rays, right? Like, wouldn't be surprised, as someone said, oh, who cares? Like Chris Archer, you know what I mean? Like when you trade with the Rays for Matt Garza. However, I do think Paredes is a great fit. I mean, you and I covered the trade when he was sent out in 2017. And I distinctly remember Jamer was the big name, Jamer Candelaria at that point. And I remember someone from the Cubs saying kind of offhandedly, like, man, the Tigers did a good job. Like they were, and I think you heard the same thing. Like they were on Paredes, who was a very like low level guy and is not like a physical specimen, doesn't like, crush the ball, but just at that time, the perception was he just seems to be in the right place at the right time and makes the right plays. It was kind of a subtleness to his game that has obviously carried him a long way. And just a total, maybe not a 180, but just like a wow. Like, when did we discuss something like this? You know what I mean? Like, how many times have we talked about, are they going to buy? Are they going to sell? They're probably going to sell. Like, to have something like this kind of drop out of the sky seemingly is kind of amazing.
He has 3 more years of control after this season. Christopher Morel has 4. He's 4 months older than Christopher Morel. So, that's a wash right there. He's an obviously better defender right now. I'm not ruling out Christopher Morel. Isaac Paredes was suspect defensively at third base, and he's brought himself to an average defender at third base. But the Cubs want to win in 2025. I think they'll be in it the rest of the way. I'm not going to, when I say that, I mean that it's what I've said all along. The NL is just so mediocre. I don't think anyone's really pulling away just yet. So they're going to be hovering like they have been for the past month, which is just kind of like they're there. But
in the hunt.
Sure. We can those graphics with the Bears in the bottom right corner, right? But it's one of those moves where it's like, have they done this before? Have they? It's always sell for pieces that are far away or buy for immediate gratification. So I do like the concept of that. There's there is an in between, and I think this is a different side of this front office that we haven't seen, that we didn't see when Theo was around. It was a different time, obviously,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they never really had seasons like this. I think maybe we would have seen it. There were seasons that I think Theo would have liked to have seen them kind of stall in July, so he could have made moves like this.
Yeah.
I think he had that desire at times to be creative, but the team just always did enough to stay in it.
Yeah.
And then that meant he was buying, and that because they'd won a World Series, he's like, I got to invest in this team. I know what they can do in October if given the opportunity, type thing, right? So this is just we haven't seen something like this because they've never really fully had the opportunity. So while I doubted it would happen, I was fully with you. I agreed. I was like, I just don't see them pulling something off. I understood what Jed was saying when he said that last Monday about, looking for help for 2025, and what Council was talking about. I just didn't think they'd be able to pull it off. I will say I agree with you that I'm a little surprised that Morel had the value that he did, but the Rays are the exact type of team that will look at those expected stats and say, like, you know what, we can get him to be that player that he's supposed to be, quote unquote.
Yeah.
They like that. They like pitchers with stuff, and both these guys, Ty Johnson is a strikeout guy, Hunter Biggie strikeout guy. Yeah, like I understand what the Rays are looking at here. I'm not sure if this is going to bite the Cubs in the end. And like I think it buys them time. It gives them a little flexibility because Isaac Paredes doesn't have to play third base. If the Cubs want to get creative in the winter, there are different things they can do. We'll see what they do over the next 2 days. I wouldn't be surprised if there are sell moves that upset fans in certain ways. But this is an interesting move because it gives them a lot of options. And he's under control for 3 years at our prices. And if he produces like he has, that's going to be a bargain. And it gives you financial flexibility too. Not to the extreme probably of the Jose Quintana, like how they justified Jose Quintana. It allowed them to add to the rotation and go get Darvish. Probably not to that extreme as far as the discount, but it's arb years, and he's not like a crazy priced guy. He's not going to make 25-30 million in his final arb year. So it's going to be that he's under control. It gives them financial flexibility and maybe even some positional flexibility. We'll see what type of moves they make at before the deadline and then in the winter. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting move, and I'm very curious to see how they proceed.
No, I'm with you. My thoughts were, I went down an internet rabbit hole the other day, which is always a good idea, but part of it was one of the mailbag questions about, a prospect pushing Morel. And I was like, well, it's probably getting more someone like Alex Bregman. And do you think Theo would feel very comfortable after not signing Matt Chapman to go back to Scott Boras for an Alex Bregman deal? Like, as he's in his early 30s, like how many years is that going to take? Does that start with a 1? Does it start with a 2? Like where is that going to go? And Jed's not going to be comfortable with that. And, I do think Paredes, it's just fascinating a year after trading for Jeimer Candelario.
Right.
And you're right. Theo was getting itchy in 2017. Like, I don't think he felt great about making that trade for Vila and Wilson. There was a scenario in which he could have just kind of said, screw it, and traded Wade Davis and Jake Arrieta and tried to clean up that way. And understandably kind of had to honor the World Series title defense at that moment. And so, yeah, I could totally see a scenario in which Morel just has one monster season, right? I mean, over the next 4 years with the Rays, sure. Or he has one great year next year and the Rays immediately trade him. High value. Like Hunter Biggie, maybe his arm blows out because he throws 100, or maybe he does slide in there and all of a sudden is closing games for Tampa. They're gonna have lots of shots at this to make this deal look bad for the Cubs. I just don't see how they could have just kept going down this path. And I think it very much changed the conversation in an instant in a positive direction. I mean, within your own clubhouse, people in the media be like, oh, wow, like the Cubs can actually do stuff like this. And, Christopher Morel, I was big in that I felt like the Cubs had to find out what they had in him. I think his talent, his energy, all of that stuff is unique and should not be dismissed or taken for granted. But like, this guy's had a lot of runway here. I mean, it's like 3 seasons with 100+ games, and he doesn't have a position in his 10th season in the organization. And so while good dude, homegrown success story, was a, kind of a complimentary player on 3 bad Cubs here. It's not like he went to the playoffs with the Cubs. It's not like he all-star games with the Cubs. It was like he's a really interesting talent, a good dude who came up in your organization, but at a certain point, like enough's enough. Like you need to see production, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, and listen, I still believe he should have better numbers, but the last 2 months, the first 2 months ish, yes, he's a better player than what the number said. The last month and a half or whatever, he is what he is. This is what he's been. And like, the contact hasn't been as good. The at-bats, he's still taking his walks and not striking out at a crazy rate, but it just wasn't looking as good as it did that first month or two. And like you said, you just have to, I mean, eventually it's about results, and Paredes gets them. I mean, there's going to be a lot of discussion about how he gets all his home runs straight to the pull side. Okay. And I believe right down the line in Tropicana is 315. It's very easy if you're a pull, like heavy pull, and he is. Go look at his home run charts. But I mean, yes, Wrigley is deep at the corner, but then it kind of juts in, and the left field alley is shallow. It's the shallowest in baseball, I believe. Now he's more extreme pull and not straight up alley. But there are things that, like, it's really rudimentary to just go look at StatCast and say, like, it says it's 19 home runs at Tropicana and 11 homers at Wrigley. That doesn't include the wind. And the wind, like, it's the wind. I know people are going to say, well, it blows in a lot at Wrigley. What happens at Wrigley is it blows in from right. It kills lefties in at Wrigley. There's a lot of crosswind at Wrigley, and if you pull the ball hard, he doesn't have crazy exit velocities, but if you pull the ball in the air, you can get some cheapies to left field. There's
are you trying to pitch me on a global warming's impact on Wrigley Field story? Isn't that what everyone wants to read? That's kind of been like room in your house with all of these charts and
trying to figure it out exactly.
Trying to figure it out, like the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
It's a project for another day, but I do believe I do believe there's like, we can't just like, I've gotten kind of sick of like, oh, well, if you look at this chart, it just overlay Wrigley over his home runs. Wrigley is one of the weirdest ballparks when it comes to wind.
Yeah.
So we just cannot do that. It doesn't work like that. There's often a crosswind. It's often blowing out straight to left. Like, this is let's see what happens. I agree that it's a question mark. I want to understand it more, and I want to see it more. He is very pull extreme. It's an extreme thing, but this is something that, like, I asked Counsell about it after the game on Sunday, and he did not hesitate. He's like, pulling the ball in the air is a skill. It is something that it's very hard to do, and it's something you want players to do. If you can do that consistently, that's a good thing. And then I talked to a couple of players about it, and one was adamant that it's a great thing to do that at Wrigley if you're right-handed. If you're a lefty, it's not the best thing in the world. If you're a righty, you're going to get extra home runs if you can pull the ball in the air consistently. I just think looking at those charts and straight up StatCast is the wrong way to do it. And guess what? I think the Cubs may know about those things. There's a chance that they've seen the StatCast data. Like my guess is they have maybe a little more advanced analysis going on. I'd love to hear their deeper explanation if they're willing to share it. But I don't think like fans should just that are super aware of that should just assume that means he can't succeed at Wrigley.
I mean, nerds are the worst. I mean, we all know that. I think this is pretty straightforward. Like, I don't know, dude played on a 99 win team last year. He has a position and can play multiple positions. He's under long-term control. Like you said, he's not old. He's 25. Can fit on the air quotes next great Cubs team. Buys time for the Matt Shaws and the James Triantoses and the Cam Smiths in your farm system. The same way that signing Cody Bellinger was supposed to, give him some backup plans in case Michael Busch didn't work out or if PCA wasn't quite ready. And so this is a very Jed Hoyer move. I feel like this is kind of the stuff that, he has kind of pined for and talked about when he mentions, value and looking at what small market teams do. And now obviously the Cubs have to like go out and do more. I thought the Nate Pearson deal was another walk down memory lane for us. That was a guy the Cubs almost drafted, but did not. And then we were pointing out how awesome he was. Like, when things weren't looking so great for the Cubs. And then I never followed him ever again after writing that. Turns out he's pretty bad. But now it's time to pitch lab him up and see what happens. Right?
Yeah, it sounds like the focus will be his fastball. I had started writing this, and the Isaac Paredes news broke, so that'll be a story for another day. But the focus is the fastball. It's getting hit hard. Lefties are hitting it hard. This isn't unusual for the Cubs. Like teams like to eliminate pitches. Or just say like that's a split neutral, or that's not a split neutral pitch. Don't use that against lefties. It sounds like they want to use a slider more against lefties. And then there's some deception with the fastball that he may have lost due to some mechanics that are. How do we kind of compared it to what happened with Tyon last year? He was opening up a little too early against lefties, and they were catching his fastball early, and it allowed him to jump on the fastball. He believes that it's a minor tweak, and that may be a more long-term thing. And when I say long-term, like that's not something that'll happen over the next 2 months. But the pitch usage is a simple fix, right? Like he knows how to throw those pitches. Just change up how often you're throwing certain pitches to certain players and maybe try and locate it in different zones. This guy's got nasty stuff. Like when he was coming up through the minors, I've heard stories about amateur guys like getting a look at him before he was drafted. Like he had workouts for teams, and like his bullpens. It was the 17 draft, 18 draft.
17
right?
draft, yeah.
17 draft. So this is right when the Cubs didn't have all the fancy pitch lab stuff, but it was pretty common with teams like the Brewers and the Astros and things like that. And they I heard like some of the workouts he had when like taking in the data was like, whoa, this guy's nasty. And scouts were like, this guy's got 4+ pitches. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So like the stuff is there. Now it's about harnessing it, right? And like the Cubs love guys like that. Like they took Julian Merriweather and had a brilliant season out of him last season. They're certainly going to be optimistic about this. Now it's about let's see what he can do. I think it's an interesting addition. You didn't give up any like huge prospect. It's definitely worthwhile. He's under control for a few more years. He could turn into a high leverage arm in the bullpen. They certainly need more stuff, guys. Especially when you send out Biggie and you get someone like Nate Pearson in a separate deal. I think it's worthwhile to see what he can do. And he strikes. I mean, he's like his peripherals are good. He's striking out nearly 30% of the guys he faces, and his walk rate it's nearly 10%. That's not great, but when you strike that many guys out, like that's it's an interesting ad, and the type of ad that it's like when things were going, when they had the arms to work with, right? When they had those arms and they were churning out like guys
Yeah,
and like
man. Jason
fixing guys.
Adam and
Yeah,
yeah.
like they do a solid job of fixing these guys. Um, I think it's worth a flyer. Absolutely. It's been an interesting first two moves, that's for sure. I did not expect to be breaking down major league additions that can impact the team over the next 2 months.
Well, I certainly thought, Jed, like with most things, would have waited until like the absolute last minute to execute these things, but clearly the Rays kind of disrupted the trade market. And I do think that's a good like pivot point here for us, because you had mentioned it earlier of like, be prepared if there are a couple of trades that, as a Cubs fan, you're like, wait, what just happened? Like, why did they trade Mark Leiter Jr., Julian Mary, whoever it is? I mean, the Cubs have made it clear that they don't really value individual relievers that highly. And if they think they can go grab a Nate Pearson, a waiver claim like Julian Merriweather, and kind of get them to a place where they're a trusted late inning reliever. And if teams are, we had a story up on The Athletic of how there's been some sticker shock in terms of like how much some of these even rental relievers are going to cost. And knowing how Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins operate, I'm sure they're looking at that of like, oh, what could we get? Like, why don't we get in on that? And that if you look at it, they're not under duress, because guys like Leiter and Merriweather are under club control for 2 more years after this. But if you are incorporating Pearson, you're going to get some pitchers healthy-ish. You only have to cover 55 games. And if you can get some team will make it worth your while, I don't think they'd hesitate, right?
No, absolutely. It's all about, like, I think every single thing boils down to this. This front office is all about value. Anybody's available for the proper value, right? You get a good return. Anybody is available. It's yes, there are some caveats to that right now because they're not building towards the long-term future. Like they're looking to win in 2025, so they can't. If they're sending out 3 WAR, they need to be able to say we're getting 3+ WAR in 2025 in this deal. So there's that they have to consider. But certainly, and Mark Leiter Jr., listen, like, I felt this way watching him when he was struggling. I just did not think he looked that bad. I did not. And then I started digging into the numbers, and they backed that up. Like, all the peripherals said his bad stretch was just pure ERA stuff, where great contact, great strikeouts, slightly elevated walks. That's it. But he was getting BABIP to hell. He was still like just getting no luck. And now he's back and healthy, and he looks nasty. And talking to the dude, he's always confident. He's as confident as ever right now. And I think like the Cubs should, from what we're hearing, the asking price is high, and it should be. Like, he's like, if teams are doing their homework, they're going to be well aware that this guy's a valuable pitcher in high leverage moments, and he can face any part of a lineup. With the fact that his curveball has gotten so good this year too. I mean, he can get lefties out with the splitter. He can get anyone out with the curveball. Like, he's a really good pitcher right now. It's impressive to watch. And he's not. I think that IL stint is kind of refreshed him and kept him from kind of having that, like what
happened last year.
Yeah, I believe it'll keep him from burning out in September. He's going to be rested and ready to help a contender if that's the direction they go. Someone's got to pay up. I don't think they're giving any of these guys away. There's no reason to. You said it. They don't have anyone that they just have to move. There's nothing. They want to win next year. So if they believe these guys can still help them, they're going to keep them around.
Yeah, and this may wind up being an old take exposed or whatever, but I do think like getting Paredes in the fold, you keep some of those bullpen guys. You just have less work to do in the offseason. You can commit more resources towards, obviously, you need a catcher, maybe need two catchers, depending on how things go. But certainly like one guy that you can really count on to work with Amaya at the very least. And then it becomes that, where do you get the bat? Where do you get the slugging percentage? But I do think Paredes really does lengthen the lineup in a way that Morel didn't, even if he doesn't have the same like thump. I do think he is a guy who can like find a way to contribute in different forms, or his performance and production will take maybe different shapes than Morel. But I do think definitely gives you much steadier baseline, and like to look out, from where we sit up in the press box to see Paredes, Swanson, Horner, and Bush, like as your infield, through at least for the next 2 years at least. I think that's pretty good. I mean,
yeah. Well, and
like,
defensively too, right?
Yeah, like obviously Dansby's not hitting the way he's supposed to, but like that's pretty solid. And then I think if you just kind of like, Cubs were really like, I'm still kind of stunned at just how much. Like, I don't think this is like a blockbuster deal. I remember Jed, as an aside, a long time ago. I feel like he was kind of surprised when the Samardzija deal was like called the blockbuster, and it's like, well, that happened on the 4th of July.
Right.
You had Billy Bean and Theo, two like these huge money ball, like Hollywood style executives. Addison Russell was like a top 5 prospect
Right.
in the game. And even like, I don't know, almost every casual sports fan had heard of Jeff Samardzija for the most part. You know what I mean? Like, he was a really big name for obvious, 2-sport reasons. But, this is the Rays, it's Paredes, it's a little more. Even Morel is not like a star, but it just totally shifts the conversation here of just like, okay, like the Cubs aren't as stuck as they appear to be. And now that when you kind of add a guy like this, you still have, and I know people were rolling their eyes when Jed said this, and I get that, because he had not been, the results just haven't been there, but he does have lots of options in terms of currency, prospects, financial flexibility. That's what you go out and do.
Yeah. No, and he didn't give up. He still has like his best 10, 15, 20 prospects still. Like, he hasn't given them up yet. He's got a lot of currency and financial flexibility. And again, I hate saying financial flexibility, but it's true. They've done a good job here. And it's like the season hasn't gone the way anyone expected it or hoped it would go, but this is an interesting move. And I think you and I and many fans and onlookers have said this team needs a shakeup. It's happened now. We'll see what the rest of the moves are. Jameson Taillon is scheduled to pitch Monday night. We'll see what happens there. I could be, it depends what the return is. That's all it is, I think, there, because I think moving him when you have him for 2 more years beyond this, what he brings, like the stability in the middle of that rotation, I think it's a risk. But I also understand, hey, this is a seller's market, so we'll see what if that's the direction they go. I mean, I think we'll have to hear what the return is. Same with these relievers. There's going to be more. There's going to be more moves. I'd be surprised if Jed's done. They're busy and hold up. There's a reason Jed didn't talk to us today and just put out a statement in the press release. He's waiting till the dust settles and everything is finished here. They've got about 48 more hours, a little less than that, right? You'll be in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
You'll be there to cover it all. There's going to be more news to break and for us to talk about. We will be on top of it, just like we were on this one. And thanks for listening. This is I did not expect to have to be recording this podcast and be talking about this, but it's fun and it's exciting. I hope fans are as fascinated as we are by this, but there's more to come. So we'll be on top of it. Make sure you're reading The Athletic, listen to subscribe, rate, review, all those good things to Northside Territory. We appreciate you listening. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.